In the last video, we enabled Entity Framework for the database storage. We injected it using dependency injection, and now we're ready to link the real application to the database. The first thing we'll do is link this settings page. So let's get most of these elements actually saving and committing to the database and fetching when it starts back up to reload the settings. So one of the first things we'll do is link these buttons. I think this is already linked, but we'll double check. We want to link this drop down and also put some better dummy data in, link all these three, and then go from there. The first port of call will be on the settings page. We now need to link this with the data models. Why aren't we getting our visual? Settings page view model, no default constructor. Yeah, of course, because now we have a requirement for a constructor, the design time data. Until we handle this a different way, we now need to just make a constructor with nothing in, and we can have a call to this, and then we need to pass in now a database factory, and then inside there we need a new factory to return a database service. Inside there we need a new application context, and I think that's it. And then this will be design time constructor, and we can probably think of a better way to do this in future. But for now, that should work. There we go. Let's start with this skip files. So at the moment, we have nothing bound to this checkbox. Let's check in the view model. Do we actually have properties? No, we don't. So we've only got location paths. So the first thing we need to do is add some new properties. We'll make an observable property, private Boolean. And if we compare this to the data model, I believe we should have them in the data model. We pretty much want to clone these things. So we'll clone this one, make an underscore, and then we'll clone again. We'll do the allow duplicates. We've got the location paths. We need to do the SolidWorks host IP. I'm going to rename that because we want really SolidWorks host, not IP. It could be a DNS, it could be a name, it could be an IP. It's not just necessarily an IP, so we'll rename that. One thing we'll do then is also delete the database because we've changed it. So we just right click on here, open an Explorer, go up to the desktop, into the build, and then in the settings here, of course, the designer's got it locked. Let's close Avalonia. Try again and reopen. And now with the database wiped, that should be good when we spin it up, that this will be renamed. We want these three as well. So let's just copy this over, put a string, copy that 3 times. And that should be it for now. Again, remember this password will do something with in the future. For now, we're just going to keep storing it just as is. It's not going anywhere yet, so we don't need to worry about that. And with the entries here, we should be able now bind them into the actual UI, which has disappeared again. Why have we lost the UI again? Maybe the database is complaining about something. Just restart again. There we go, just restarting brought it back, so I don't know what happened there. So on this skip files now, we should be able to bind the isChecked to skip no action files. And then the same for duplicate entries. We can do isChecked binding duplicate entries. That's those 2 checkboxes bound to the view models. The location's already bound. We want to bind this IP here, which if we search for enter the machine's IP, we get to here. This combo box is bound to location paths, which is not what we want. We want to bind it to machines. So we go to the view model. We have nothing at the minute in any of them. So we don't even have it in the data. Oh, yeah, we do. We have it in the data model, but we didn't put it here. We forgot to clone that one. I think that's because it was grey. I kind of overlooked it. So this will be an underscore SolidWorks host, and that can be bound to the selected item. But we also need a list of machines. Now, this will be discoverable in our code once we write the batch process client devices that broadcast our IPs. Until then, I'm just going to make an observable list, or observable collection as it's called, of strings. I'll just call this SolidWorks hosts, I believe. This should also be actually an observable collection, not a list. And then this will need to be a new observable collection, because at the minute it's a list. And then this, for now, we'll put a to-do, fetch from network pings. We will just make one for now, and we'll just put, say, 192. Actually, we'll put localhost. And this is all just the same anyway, it's just some dummy data, but let's just put some actual variations in here. Let's make up an IP address. And now we can bind to this SolidWorks hosts as the drop-downs. And then we have the PDM enterprise we want to bind to now. So vault name has a combo box with, again, a drop-down of vault names. So let's just clone that in the vault name here. We'll go just above. Fetch from PDME when we come to do that code. But for now, again, it will just be PDM vault names. And we'll just call this vault 1, vault 2, and vault 3. We can now bind that to vault names and the selected item to the vault name. Put these on new lines and give that a solid value. It's a bit easier to see then. That should give us a drop down there. We have the username, which is here. So instead of having a value, we can now bind this text to PDME username and bind the password to the password. Let's just run that. If I've done that right, all the drop downs should work. So those we presume are bound, we can't really tell. This drop down now has values. We want to give this a width so it doesn't change size as we're changing options though. Vault name, there we go, 1, 2, and 3. So that's all bound correctly. Let's just give that combo box here a width. So in here we'll do a width of 300. Oh, wrong one. It's the one above that. This combo box, width 300. Bit long, maybe width 200. That's better. So now we can proceed to link these to committing to the database and fetching after we change things. So one thing to think about is we don't really want to have a kind of save button. It's a bit old school. So if we're checking this option, we don't want to then have a save button down here where we've got to commit that option. It's such a small thing that if we made the decision to check this box, then that's what we want to do. We want to just commit that straight to the database. If we're typing though, we don't want to commit to the database every time we type. So in this instance, when we're changing, we probably want to do it when, say, we try to log in or refresh. That's a committing action, and that's when we want to save these values. We might in future want to consider if we say change this and don't click these and expect to tab away. On tab away, maybe we commit everything as well, just to be sure. So we want to try and think about as and when we hit the database up to save the values. We don't really want to have a save button. It wants to be a bit more modern than that. So let's start in the view model. We'll go in the constructor here, and I'd say this is where we load in. This is the design time which fires off this constructor as well. So in here is where we will always hit up when we enter the settings page. I don't know why we left temp remove here. That's not really temp code anymore. This, then we hit the database up, we pull in location paths. We want to do a bit more than that now. So instead, we'll just call load settings. And then we will make a private void load settings. Put this in here. We want to get the database, and then we want to get settings. So var settings equals db context dot settings. Get settings. And I'm not liking this kind of null check. We don't really want this to be nullable. If we don't have settings, I think instead of just fetching this and returning blank, this is probably where we want to do the default. Whereas at the minute, where did we do the default? Was it in the app? Main view model, maybe? There we go. So this here is really, I think, the wrong place to do this. This is kind of loading default settings, but in a main view model. So let's cut that out. Go to wherever I was a minute ago, which I've already forgotten. Here, get settings. So let's turn this into an actual method. And the first thing we do is do var settings equals, and then we attempt to get settings first. If the settings aren't equal to null, then we can return we're done. So in this case, we will return the settings. However, if we have no settings, generate default. So we could split this into another method that's literally get default settings, but I don't think we're going to consume that anywhere else for now. So instead, we'll just do it straight in here. And this is where I think if I paste this code in, we had this. So we were saving to settings, which is in this class. So that would be this. And we made new settings. Because we need to return the settings, we're going to have to cut this out. Set the settings here. Then save them because we want to commit them to the database. So save to database. And then also return the settings. So this is now effectively going to make a default settings regardless, and we can remove that question mark, so we can always be guaranteed now settings, which is better. I guess while we're in here, let's just make another change. Let's just say make this true, so we can see if this is working. When we make default settings, the first checkbox should be checked. And then back to where we were consuming that now. So when we load the settings, I think this is where we were, we now don't have to do null check. So this null check is now not required. And I think that's fine. So what we need to do here now is to restore all of the settings. So we can give this a comment. I guess update view model from settings stored in database. That's what this is doing. We get the settings from the database. So get settings from database and then update view model. In here, we have SolidWorks host equals, and now we should have settings dot SolidWorks host. And then we're just going to do this for all of them. So skip no actions equals this. Allow duplicates equals this. PDM password equals this. PDM vault name equals this. PDM username equals this. Now I think that is everything. And then in the constructor, we load the settings. And we then need, well, I guess we can run that because I think if the database was null at the right time, we will have that default checkbox. So we don't have a default checkbox there, but maybe that's because the settings already exist is my guess. So if we ran the code and debugged, I think we've already got settings stored in the database. So yeah, we have settings that aren't empty. So we know this would run, but obviously we don't have a blank database at the minute. And that should mean once we save, then it reloads. So now we need to actually save. For that, we'll want another method, private void save settings. In here, we want to do the database context again. And then we just simply call db context dot save settings. And now we need to pass in a settings data model. So we'll make a helper function, call it toDataModel, And then in here, private void to data model. And this is where we want to convert our current view model into a data model. So you can automate things like this where we're setting values and updating values, but I like to keep it kind of hard-coded for now. It's more explicit of what you're actually setting and you're in more of a control. And if you start doing JSON serialize and deserialize, and this class ends up having properties that aren't really meant to be committed to the database, things can go a little bit out of skew. So for the amount of work involved, I like to just do this by hand effectively. And we can make this just straight into a call to make a new class. And then here now, this will be a settings data model. And why is it not? Oh, we haven't returned the right type. So settings data model. There we go. So now we can set location paths for the data model. And this will equal our location paths of the view model to list, I believe it is. And then in the kind of reverse order of this, we now need to load them up backwards. So we'll have SolidWorks host equals SolidWorks host. You'll notice the SolidWorks hosts, these things aren't committed to the database. So this is where the separation comes in. The view model needs to be aware of these things, but the database doesn't. So that's the difference between, one of the differences between the view model and the data model. We then got skip, no actions, allow duplicates, all three PDMs, and I think that is everything. So if we called to data model, or rather save settings, which calls to data model, this will commit the settings to the database. So all we need to do now is fire the save settings whenever we want to commit what's visible in the view model. What we're going to do is let's start with these checkboxes. When these checkboxes change, we'll fire off the commit straight away. So instead of hooking into every checkbox and firing off an event, instead, we will override the onProperty changed because we are in a view model. So we're going to have a property changed. And then inside of here, we want to do a check for if e.property name is name of, and then it will be the skip actions file or name of the allow duplicate entries. And I haven't put a bracket there, parentheses there. If it is any of those, we simply call save settings. And the SolidWorks host as well, the IP address. So every time this drop down changes, I think we can commit. That will be for name of SolidWorks host. So anytime those three change, we fire off a save. Let's see if that works. And I think this will fire. That might be an issue, actually. This will fire even when the data's loading in. Yes, like this. So we'll come to that after. PDM vault name. Not null. They technically are null. So let's just make sure none of these are ever null. And then location paths is really, you could probably do that to make sure that's never null. Well, that should be it, I think. This can be read only. Now let's try that again. So we know the save settings is hitting. My concern, as I mentioned though here, is this is actually going to commit to the database when this is loading up before we really want it to. So this is going to happen when this view pops up. You can see if we check that, it's going to now call save settings, going to pull the data model in, and then with the new settings here, which includes or should include that set to true, which it does, this is now going to save to the database. So that means now if that's checked and we close and then we reopen, you can see it's going to call save settings here, so we don't need to monitor that. And it's reopened with this checkbox. So in the same vein, if we check this, come out, come in, it's remembered it, toggle these away, out and in, remembered that. If we enter things here, these will be lost because we don't currently save those items. So you can see they're now gone. But if we close this, I think even the preview in here should load. So if I refresh, there you go. So it's even working inside the designer. I don't like, however, that this will always kick in on property changed, even when the view's initially loading and pulling settings in and binding from the actual view models. So that can cause us a problem, but it hasn't yet. Now we've got these three bound. We aren't committing these three until we hit these buttons, or if we change these values technically. So let's test out the logic, because we're not saying to just commit this to the database when we click it. We're simply saying commit the whole page. So that means if we type something in here, go away and come back, it's lost. But if we type something in here, click another button, that should now have saved the value, which it does. But when we change this and do this, we either want to save when we're leaving the page, or let's also link in with the login button for now and have an event that would also commit then. So in the view model, we'll want a command for that. So we'll do a private void pdme login, and you don't put command, that will come from tagging this with a relay command in here to do login to pdme save settings to database. So now we should also commit whenever we click. Oh, no, actually, we need to bind the button. It would help if we actually do something with that. So the login button is here. We will do a command binding login command, and now we should commit when we click that button. So if we do a drop down vault2, Luke, and test, click login, tab away, back in, you can see it's now saved that as well. If we build, we should also have the values in here. Oh, and it's not there. Let's run again. And yeah, it's lost those settings. So log in, tab away, tab in, settings there, restart, and it's lost them. So my bet is this is probably what I'm thinking here in this property change, because this is just handled straight away. We really want to only hook into this event once we have loaded up here and kind of established all the bindings, which should happen within a relatively fast time. So I think, I guess we could do property changed plus equals and add an event here. Yeah, let's do that and then add a delay. So what we'll probably do is do a task.delay of 10, well, I'll say 100 milliseconds, then dot continue with. So after that time, we will then do something. So this is just going to be, what's that waiting for? Sender and events, maybe. Task, dismiss that. There we go. So this will just run 100 milliseconds after the view model's created and we move into the page, which should be more than enough time for all the binding to happen, we're hoping. And then a property change plus equals. Why is the IntelliSense not helping me out here now? Okay, never mind. There we go. In here we'll move this. And if that works, then we should see this commit and actually save these values. So let's do vault, Luke, test, login. Tab away and in was never a problem, but restarting the application was. So now hopefully this will remember the settings. And there we go, it has. So this is a little bit hacky in a way. What we could ideally do is to know when the view model spun up, the page is bound, and when this page is finished doing its initial bindings. There might be something in the flow. We might be able to kind of override some part of the process. So not on design time constructor, property changing. A quick Google on Avalonia lifecycle events, if we believe the AI, tells us it's probably this loaded event we want. So it says occurs after attached to visual tree and on apply template, which when the template applies, it does all the binding to the view models. So I think if we just attached to the loaded instead of doing a delay, so we get rid of that delay. Can we just override loaded? No. So can we hook into a loaded event? And of course we can't run the view model. So could we, where else could we do this? See, we kind of have a nice little solution at the minute, which is the delay. But we probably, the correct way then would be a loaded event here, some code behind here. Once we're in here, we could get then, I like this in one way and I don't in another, but we could get the settings page view model, which is going to be the data context, which should be valid here already. Should never be null, but we'll probably null check it anyway. And then we need to call a function, which could be, I guess, view loaded. Let's make an event like that. And we could even make this a view model and put that in a base and then override it in case we wanted to do this more often. So if we did the view model base, I believe it is, you can see this is more work, but this is more technically correct and less prone to error. We'll do a similar thing like this. So we'll do a protected virtual on, what do we call it? View loaded, like so. And then this is just a method we can override to be called by whatever we like. So that should now be fine. Why is that complaining? Not actually, because I made it protected. It needs to be public. So on view loaded, it's now public. That can now invoke it. This is now saying that's not nullable. Yeah, let's just leave all that in for protection so it never crashes. That will invoke for us. And now what we need to do in here is we also need to override on view loaded. There's no base, so what we can do is then hook into the events here. So this way should be foolproof because we're actually obeying the whole binding and life cycle of the application. We're not just doing a lazy delay. So now if we do loop 2, that 2, change that to 3, log in, close and reopen. There we go, that's worked. So instead of relying on a potential delay that could fail if your PC is slower or you're debugging or whatever other reason, this should now be fired regardless at the correct time. So I think that's this page bound in as far as we want to go right now. These buttons, as I mentioned before, are all kind of temporary settings we don't currently have. These aren't database settings, they're not involved. This is already bound. We probably want to add like a delete button and this browse folder feature after, but that's not part of the binding. This entire page now is bound to the backend database correctly. So that's it for this one, guys. I'll catch you in the next.